Attention sports teams. Let us introduce you to the best fan engagement tool in the game, .vote. By getting a .vote web address for your team, you can allow fans to engage and interact with big-time decisions. In a single click, not only can fans make their opinions heard, but sports teams get a better understanding of their fans' interests. Keep your fans engaged. Simply visit GoDaddy.com today, type in the desired name of your web address, and let the voting begin.
The winners and losers from Wild Card Weekend in the NFL, how some media members just never learn. Plus, we're joined by the great Keith McPherson. It's all ahead on a new episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. Hey, welcome in, off and running, episode number 68 of Gordon Damer on Sports. Lots to get into on this episode after a fantastic wild card weekend around the NFL. Maybe the last couple of games, not so fantastic. Certainly the Steelers, no match for the Texans last night. But overall, still a fantastic wild card weekend. So we'll get into winner of the weekend, loser of the weekend. Also, how the NFL media, man, they have the shortest memories of anyone alive. Plus, we'll talk with our buddy Keith McPherson, get some thoughts on everything NFL, some baseball stuff too with the Yankees and the Mets in the offseason, what's going on there with Cody Bellinger. But before we get to any of that, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you are taking in the podcast on. Like the episode, share the episode, rate the episode if you can, and most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. It only takes a second, and most importantly, it's free. It doesn't cost you any money, and it really does help the podcast grow moving forward as we get into 2026. All right, let's get into it because the biggest winners and biggest loser from the weekend, and to me, they are clear-cut. And you could have plenty of candidates for both categories. I'm going to start with the biggest loser because to me, that one is even more clear-cut than the biggest winner. And you could go with a lot of candidates here. Certainly, the Eagles would seem like to be a good candidate there, right? The defending Super Bowl champions in a year where we all say the playoffs are wide open. The Eagles should be ready to go on another run. They are a win-now kind of team. But at the end of the day, I think with the Eagles losing, you could go with Nick Sirianni, you could go with the offensive coordinator. But to me, that loss was not that shocking because I think that the Eagles just were who we thought they were. Like, that's who they were all season long. Their offense was unimaginative. It stalled as games gone on, and that's exactly what happened. They did not look like they flipped the switch, which if you're an Eagle fan or an Eagle hater, you might have been worried about or hoping for if you were an Eagle fan. But that's exactly what happened. Their offense was a problem all season long, and I think, frankly, they got what was coming to them. So the Eagles are going to have a very difficult offseason, but that loss was not shocking in any way. I don't think anybody sat and watched that game and thought once it was over, boy, how did that happen? We kind of saw that coming that was the question about the Eagles. Were they going to be a different team come postseason time because of their postseason experience? Or were they just going to be the same team? And we got our answer. They were exactly the same team that we watched all season long. So now they're going to have some uncomfortable questions about the offensive coordinator, maybe the coach, maybe the quarterback, but there are going to be changes. To me, the biggest loser of the weekend was Matt LaFleur. And I don't think that it was particularly close because the Packers, unlike the Eagles, should still be playing. You know, that was not a talent mismatch in that loss to the Bears. That wasn't a roster being exposed. That was a meltdown, a slow motion car wreck in real time where you're watching it, you can see what's coming, and there's not a single thing that you can do to stop it. And the Packers couldn't do a single thing to stop it. So for 3 quarters, and really even more than that, right? More than halfway through the fourth quarter, the Packers were the better team. And then, like we've seen many times before under Matt LaFleur, and what we've seen with the Bears this season many times before, all of a sudden, things flipped. The script completely flipped, and it was for the Packers another fourth quarter meltdown, another second half collapse in a playoff game, and another offseason for Green Bay. They've got to be saying to themselves, man, what do we got to do to get over the hump? Because it's another offseason that begins before it really feels like it should have. And at some point, these things become a pattern, right? Like on Saturday night against the Bears, you're looking at a game, the Packers were up 21-3 at halftime. There's no way you should be losing that 21-3. And it wasn't smoke and mirrors. It wasn't, the benefit of a couple of lucky breaks or a couple of bad calls. They were winning that game. Now, things went the Packers' way and didn't go for the Bears, but they were the better team at that point. They played confident. They looked like a team that seemed primed for maybe a deep playoff run, even being the number 7 seed. They should have scored what was a dagger touchdown to go up, 27-16 with about 6.5 minutes to go, and they lost. In regulation, they lost. So let that sit for a second, right? Up 21-3 at halftime. That's a game you should never lose. Up 27-16 midway through the fourth quarter, and you lose that game. And don't just lose a playoff game, which is bad enough. You lose it to the division rival that your fans hate and whose coach rubs it in your face every chance he gets. From the moment that game in the second half kicked off, it didn't seem like Matt LaFleur had a lot of answers, and it felt like that the Packers were just trying to hold on to get that win. It didn't feel like that they were looking to put the foot down and put it on the throat of the Bears. So you look at their first 4 possessions of that second half, 4 punts, 9 total yards. I think they had 1 first down, 9 total yards. That's not a team that is coming out of halftime with a real good game plan to put this thing away. That's not just bad execution. I think that's bad coaching. Whatever the game plan was, they were not able to execute it in any way. You would think going into the second half like that, you have the momentum, but the Bears were able to steal that away, and the Bears fans, once they did, they realized what was going on. And again, for Matt LaFleur, he came up small in the biggest moment. He was like Coach Klein from The Waterboy. He was looking for the exit, almost felt like. So rather than weathering the storm, his team got overwhelmed. And I think that was one of the words he used in the post-game press conference. They got overwhelmed. So for the Packers, even when they were up, 27-23 with about 3 minutes to go, one of the ones that is inexcusable, LaFleur calls a timeout before a 3rd and 10. Critical point in the game, and they come out of that timeout and get a delay of game. Like, do you need any more evidence at that point of kind of being overwhelmed, not able to match the moment? That's it right there. A delay of game coming out of a timeout in a game, a playoff game, where you're leading and trying to salt the game away. So that's kind of beyond belief. That was not the crowd impact. That was not a young quarterback playing in the playoffs for the first time. That's an organization that's disorganized. I mean, I don't know another way to put it. That is coaching. And that is a real bad mark for Matt LaFleur. Now, it's not going to be the worst one because he got other ones. But after the game even, he looked shell-shocked. And, for a guy who's had as many post-game press conferences and bad ones before in the playoffs, he said his team looked disheveled. He said that the team lost their composure. Those are interesting words, and maybe there's no words you can say at that point as a head coach that's going to make it seem okay, obviously, after a playoff game. But those are words you're using about the team you're supposed to be leading. It's one thing in these playoff games sometimes you get punched in the mouth, right? Like sometimes you get into the playoffs and you go up against a team that is just way more talented than you and you just get punched in the mouth. That was not what happened here. It was almost like the Packers were punching themselves in the face as much as the Bears were punching into the face. So they shot themselves in the foot repeatedly. And this is not, the problem for Matt LaFleur. If this was one time that this happened, okay, fine. Teams, if you get in the playoffs every single year like the Packers do, you're going to have a bad loss. You're going to have a bad performance. These things happen at times. But really, since winning the divisional round playoff back in 2020, Matt LaFleur's Packers are 1-5 in their last 6 playoff games. 1-5. So I don't care who you are. 1-5 in the playoffs, that is not good. And I would have to go back and look. I believe that they were favored in all 6 of those games. And this is the part that, as a Packer fan, all of those 5 losses, whether favored or not, you go through them, and we'll go through them here in a second. They had a legitimate chance to win a lot of them. They didn't get blown out. They didn't get overwhelmed. This was not, they were a 7 seed this year. But this was not a case of, getting in and there was just a team that was just going on a run and there was just no way. They have found creative, frustrating, I would say soul-crushing ways to just throw games away. And that is kind of who they are. And since Matt LaFleur has been the head coach, that's kind of who Matt LaFleur is. He is by far the biggest loser of the weekend because, again, this was supposed to be the year that maybe it came together for the Packers. Now, look, did I expect the Super Bowl as the number 7 seed? No, but they were the first 7 seed to be favored in that situation, even playing on the road against the team that had beat them in the Bears. So go through LaFleur's tenure. It began with 3 straight number 1 seeds in the NFC, 3 straight years where the path to the Super Bowl went through Lambeau. And they have not gotten to a Super Bowl in that time. Each time, the Packers have failed to meet the expectations. Now, this year, they were the number 7 seed, but there's been times they've been the number 1 seed and didn't reach where they were supposed to. 2019, they got run out of their own building by Jimmy Garoppolo and the Niners in the NFC Championship game. Okay, so maybe that happens. That, sometimes teams are just better. 2020, you remember that one? That's the one where LaFleur made the decision to kick the field goal against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers late rather than trusting his offense on a 4th down. That came back to bite them because they lost by 1 score, and the Buccaneers go on and win a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. To me, that one still kind of haunts LaFleur in terms of bad decisions in the postseason. 2021, they were one and done, losing at home to the 49ers in a divisional round, which turned out to be Aaron Rodgers' final game as a member of the Green Bay Packers. Okay, moving since then, they have one playoff win, a wild card victory 2 years ago against the Cowboys. So that is not a great resume for a guy who's in the playoffs every single year, right? Like reputations are built on stuff like that. And reputations have been built on a whole lot less than that. And LaFleur is supposed to be this offensive savant, this schematic genius, and the great, like the next great branch off the Kyle Shanahan tree. But you take a look at his resume, even for a guy who's had a lot of success, the win-loss record is fantastic. But you take a look at that resume is starting to look a little thin. He was also on that Falcons staff that blew the 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl, that collapse, which is still the worst collapse I think I've ever seen. So fair or not, this is the type of stuff where reputations are built, and it would be one thing to kind of build some evidence to fight back against it. But LaFleur, he's not been able to do that. And he cannot be a coach that you trust in those big games, those big spots. And Saturday night, it did not do anything to quench that reputation. It only poured gasoline on the fire. So, look, there's been plenty of talk that LaFleur's job is maybe going to be up. And I want to be clear. I think that the Packers will end up keeping him. I know that the thing, it seems like they're going to have a talk between his next contract and things could still go sideways. But Green Bay is a very conservative organization. They value stability. They don't make panic moves generally. And despite what fans might want, Green Bay is not really a free agent destination for head coaches, right? Like the name you're going to hear repeatedly is John Harbaugh because he is the obviously the number 1 coach on everybody's. If you're looking for a coach, that's the first guy you want to interview. But this is not Madden, right? This is real life, and the financial demands that are being reported. He wants $20 million a year. He wants $10 million for his assistant coaches. I don't see the Packers meeting that. Again, they're not a free agent destination. So, and moving on from LaFleur would be the organization admitting, something that is an uncomfortable thing, and you're generally resistant to change in those type of situations. This is a guy who gets you to the playoffs just about every single year. He is a good offensive coach, but in the biggest of moments, and look, other great coaches have had to deal with it. Andy Reid couldn't win the big one until he got to the Chiefs and had Patrick Mahomes. So this season for the Packers, it started with Super Bowl expectations, but it ends with just another gut-wrenching loss against a coach who, again, loves to rub it in your face. That's tough to deal with if you're a Packer fan. So LaFleur probably stays. It wouldn't shock me if he left. Maybe it's a mutual parting. But after that wild card weekend, after that loss, the benefit of the doubt for Matt LaFleur, I think, is gone. The reputation at this point of not being able to win the big games, second half collapses, that is earned. That is not something that that's not a hot take that people are just throwing out there. And for him, until he's able to change that conversation, that is going to be something that lives with him for a while. And I could see a situation where even though teams are resistant to change, he goes into next season with not just high expectations again, because I'm sure the Packers are going to be a good team, but he almost kind of goes into next season on the hot seat already. And that's not a position you want to be in after Wild Card Weekend. So to me, it's clear. Biggest loser of Wild Card Weekend is the Packers' Matt LaFleur. All right, let's move on to the biggest winner of Wild Card Weekend, and a lot of candidates there as well. Clearly, if I said the Packers and Matt LaFleur are the biggest losers, you could go with Ben Johnson and the Bears being the biggest winners. I'm not, but you could. I think the Texans, the way that defense was able to absolutely manhandle the Steelers in their building, another first-round playoff loss for Mike Tomlin, and the way they were able to knock around Aaron Rodgers. Oh, my goodness. At some point, it almost felt like elder abuse watching him on Monday night. I think you could also go with the Giants, even though they were not playing on Wild Card Weekend. The fact that the Eagles and Packers both lost, but those coaching jobs, it does not look like that they are going to be open. That's a big win for them. The fact that the Giants have no new competition when it comes to trying to lure John Harbaugh, major win for the New York Giants, because those two teams would be major competition. They would supersede the Giants in terms of the number one jobs available this offseason. No, to me, the clear favorite for the biggest winner of the weekend is Josh Allen, because there is no single player who is under more pressure this postseason than Josh Allen. There's no team that is more singularly tied to one player than the Bills with Josh Allen. And if he had lost that game, even though it was on the road, even though it was against the Jaguars team that was as hot just about as anyone coming into the postseason, if he had lost that game, the ramifications of that for his reputation would have been major. Because look, this is year 8 for Josh Allen. This is year 8 in the NFL for the current reigning MVP in the league. And there are expectations that the Bills finally get to a Super Bowl this year under Josh Allen. And it's not because the Bills are so great. It's not because the Bills are a number 1 seed. They didn't win their division this year. It's not because their roster is so lights out or anything like that. It's simply because this year the path is wide open. And he is the best quarterback in the AFC field this year. It's really not close. So it's all tied to the fact that there is no Mahomes, there is no Lamar Jackson, there is no Joe Burrow. This is the year. And maybe it's a little unfair because, again, you're basing it simply on the greatness of Josh Allen. But unfair or not, that's the way these kind of conversations go. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If Josh Allen had lost that game, if the Bills had lost that game, and no matter how they lost that game, a fumble by the running back, a missed kick by the field goal kicker, a bad play on defense, a coaching decision that came up short, whatever it would have been placed on Josh Allen's resume. That's unfortunate. With the quarterback position, you get way too much credit and you get way too much blame. And that game was there to be taken, right? The Jaguars had multiple chances, plural, to win that game. They moved the ball. They ran the ball well. They hung around. The Bills, for a team that has high expectations despite being a low seed, that was an uncomfortable position to be in. That game could have gone either way. So it was not a comfortable win. It was not the kind of win where everybody sits back and takes notice of the Bills as a team. But they do look back and see they survived because Josh Allen refused to allow his team to lose. He single-handedly, I guess you could say even with the tush push, put the team on his back. Because if the Bills lose that game, nobody's talking about the fact that James Cook was basically invisible, was not able to establish anything. Nobody's talking about the defense getting gashed in the run game in any way. Nobody's talking about the roster construction or the weapons that Josh Allen has. It's all going to focus on Josh Allen. We know this. Is it fair? No, probably not. But that's what happens. We're going to be talking about Josh Allen. They always are, right? Like when you're the defending MVP and you're a quarterback in a league where the quarterback is the most important position, that's what's expected. And when you look at what he was able to overcome, the physical abuse that he took in that game, it was absolutely incredible, the performances. Big plays, fourth quarter, he rushed for 2 touchdowns, he threw for another touchdown. So the story of the game, maybe the numbers aren't the story, but the story is twice in the fourth quarter, Josh Allen led go-ahead scores on the road. Had never won a playoff game. I think the last Bills playoff win on the road was like back in 1992. So that's a long time to not have road playoff games are tough to win. And the fact that Josh Allen in a game, again, Jaguars were as hot as anybody coming in. Trevor Lawrence was playing as well as he's played in his clean games, no turnovers. That was not the case in that game on Saturday. But they were a live team in that game. That was not a team that was in the playoffs for the first time, that was overwhelmed by the moment. And you take a look at what Josh Allen was able to overcome just to stay on the field early on in the game. I don't know. Clearly, he was able to convince whoever he had to that it was not a concussion, but it certainly seemed like early on that he had his bell rung and was able to overcome that. And that would have been, that was a play that when you first saw it, you're like, uh-oh, this could really go bad. Later on, he banged his hand off, I think it was a teammate's helmet, and it seemed like that injury kind of lingered for a long while. And even later on than that, he did something to his knee or his leg where he's in a great amount of pain later on in the game. I mean, he took some real physical abuse in that game. And look, any quarterback, if they're compromised physically, they're not going to play as well. And the fact that he was able to manage that pain and manage everything else, he just keeps going, man. And I've said for a while, Josh Allen, it seems like that dude is made out of titanium. You just like the Superman thing absolutely works because he was able to overcome all of that, even when it looked like he was maybe going to be down for the count, especially that leg injury where he was grasping at his leg. You thought that might be something serious. The head thing earlier on, and he absorbs punishment in a position where if you're able to absorb that level of punishment, that matters. That matters in January. Like he is one of one in terms of playing that kind of style of football. And, I think that the thing that doesn't get pointed out enough, the Bills are not a Super Bowl roster. Like when you think about teams that you go into the postseason, you say, wow, this team, this is them set up. I think that the Bills have done a terrible job of building you look at the pass catchers, right? Like, there are real holes. The kinds that show up when you play really good teams late in the year. And it's almost like the Bills look at it and say, all right, Josh, go save us. And he was absolutely able to do that in Wild Card Weekend. Now, is he going to be able to do that moving forward? No. And will the blame lead to Josh Allen if for some reason he is not able to land them in the Super Bowl this year? I guess possibly. But, it's not a question of talent anymore about Josh Allen. We all know how talented he is, how tough he is, how big plays he makes with the legs and with the arm. He is the prototypical modern quarterback who can beat you in multiple ways. And at this point, if you are looking ahead to the draft and thinking about drafting a quarterback, if you can't draft a quarterback who can get outside the pocket and make plays, to me, that's a non-starter. Like there was a time where talking about mobile quarterbacks, do you want a pocket passer? The decision has been made. I mean, that guy can beat you in so many ways. And I think that it's no longer a question of, can you just stand in the pocket and beat people? Maybe that will turn out to be the case if Matt Stafford is able to do it. But even Matt Stafford in his career earlier on, man, that's another guy who took a ton of abuse. So look, for the Bills, every January, the margin for error is only going to get smaller. I guess that's just the case for every single team. But Sunday was a game the Bills had to have. If they lose in the AFC Championship game or if they lose this coming week, we'll be able to take a look and say, okay, fair or unfair, how much of the blame does Josh Allen really deserve? But if they had lost that game this week, Wild Card Weekend, going into a postseason where, again, it seems wide open and it seems pretty clear Josh Allen is the best quarterback in the AFC field this year. I don't really think that that's debatable. and a field that does not include Lamar Jackson, does not include Patrick Mahomes, does not even include Joe Burrow. So for the Bills, the path is clear. Now, look, you're going to have to beat other good teams. That's just the way it is. And the Bills don't have the home field advantage, although they've had home field advantage at other times, and that has not worked out. So there are no built-in excuses. But moving forward, if the Bills are unable to get to a Super Bowl, I'm sure Josh Allen, whether rightly or wrongly, will get a lot of the blame. But if they had lost this week to the Jaguars, that chorus of people who say, just doesn't have the clutch genes, just doesn't have the ability to win the big game in the big spot, all those nonsense things that come outside of talent that can't really be verified outside of wins and losses, those things would have only been magnified. So major win for the Bills, unbelievable performance by Josh Allen, and it doesn't get any easier, but that's what you're expected to do. Again, if you're a quarterback in the NFL, you get way too much credit and way too much blame. So at least for 1 week for Josh Allen, he's able to silence all those silly conversations about whether or not he's able to lift the team up, because there is no team in the playoffs this year that is more singularly focused on the Bills than the quarterback than the Bills are. Because without Josh Allen, the Bills don't have to worry about road playoff wins or home playoff wins or anything else, because they wouldn't be in the playoffs. That's how good Josh Allen is. And to me, Josh Allen is the biggest winner of Wild Card Week. All right, we're joined now by the great Keith McPherson, who's nice enough to give us a couple of minutes today, talk everything in the world of sports. Keith, this has been a very busy time in sports. Have you been able to identify the team that's willing to give Cody Bellinger 7 years on the contract?
The team that's willing to give Cody Bellinger that money, the Montreal Expos, they don't exist. The thing about Cody Bellinger, he's a good player. He's not the MVP he used to be, and he's represented by Scott Boras. So Scott Boras missed once, right? The Dodgers passed on paying him. The Cubs didn't ever really pay him, and he had that short-term deal, opted out. Here we go again. It's Scott Boras trying to drive up the market for his client, and after we saw the deal that Bregman just got, nobody is giving Cody Bellinger at age 31, this will be his age 31-year-old season, nobody's giving him 7 years, and definitely not for 37 million. So
I'll be honest with you, I'm a little concerned about giving him 5 years. You look at the last 5 years of his career, it's kind of all over the map. Got released by the Dodgers. It was a salary dump by the Cubs. This is not a guy where you pencil him in and look at the back of the baseball card, and every year you kind of know what to expect. It's kind of all over the map.
Yeah, I said he revitalized his career in the Bronx. He had a good year last year in the Bronx, but we don't know if he's going to be able to replicate that for the next 4 or 5 seasons. So, buy at your own risk. I don't know. I know the Yankees are so set on running it back, and to run it back, you need Cody Bellinger back, but their last offer supposedly was 5 years, 160 million, which is 32 million a year. No mas. I don't think they're going any higher. If they do really feel like they got to give a little bit more, no, they're not. They don't have it to spend. They're already talking about pivoting, and I think Cody Bellinger is going to have to tell Scott Boras, hey, that's where I want to be, and I don't want to end up on a random team in a random situation just to get a bigger payday.
Do you think it does? Do you think the Yankees do pivot at any point and say, you know what, we've had enough of this?
Yeah, because Cashman told us during his sleep out that, worst case scenario, they're prepared to go with Jason Dominguez in left field. Everybody's been waiting for Spencer Jones to get an opportunity. Those two could battle it out in camp if Dominguez can't field the position. I know Spencer Jones can field the position if he hits better than Dominguez. They have their number 3 and 4 outfielder already on the roster, young, controllable guys. So that's the pivot right there, and then spend the money on someone else. I don't think it'll be Bo Bichette. Bo Bichette is in Philly today meeting with the Philadelphia Phillies. Don Mattingly goes over there from Toronto. His son is the GM. I think that is the landing spot for Bo. But, the Yankees could pivot and try and make a trade for Nico Horner, maybe bring in Austin Hayes. There's other things that can be done out there. It's just not going to feel like the Yankees hit on their big fish, which was Cody Bellinger this offseason.
How about Donovan from the Cardinals? The more I've looked at him and looked at his career, I feel like that could be a fit. A guy who's dimensional in terms of position, can put up some numbers as well. I kind of like him if they do decide to move off of Bellinger.
Yeah, Brendan Donovan's another name that has come up for the last few months, even back at the trade deadline last year. The question is, what are you doing with Jazz Chisholm? And I hear a lot of people talking about throwing him in the outfield. The outfield is full. Trent Grisham took the qualifying offer. He's going to be in center field every day. The two young guys will be in left field, most likely Dominguez. Jazz does not want to play in the grass. He says he specifically wants his feet on dirt. They've already moved him to third base, moved him back to third base. He's your second baseman. If they can trade him after the 30-30 season he had, maybe. But, like, you need right-handed hitting in that lineup. You need low strikeouts in that lineup, contact in that lineup. And right now the names Nico Horner and Brendan Donovan are names that Yankee fans are saying, bring them on down.
Yeah. All right, let's go move to football. People are probably saying, why are these guys talking about baseball? It's football season. I know that you have been an NFL free agent the last couple of years. You have a young son. You want to get him into football. You've been a Cowboy fan. You don't want to put that on your son.
You got it.
Did anything happen this weekend that kind of pointed you in a direction to kind of maybe guide your son down the line?
I don't know. I have family in Jacksonville. The first ever game I went to, I used ChatGPT to look it up. It was August 22nd, 1997. Atlanta Falcons preseason game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was my first ever game that I went to in the NFL. So, like, I have a little bit of a spot in my heart for the Jags. I was rooting for them, and Josh Allen knocked them out. Yeah. So, that was short-lived. I might be leaning Jags. The Yankees spring training facility is right across the street from Raymond James Stadium. We go down there every year. I'm like, maybe the Bucks. The Ravens, I've driven down to Baltimore to Camden Yards, and that's not a hard drive. And I like their game day atmosphere. We'll see who their head coach ends up being. But I think my son is probably 2 seasons away from really understanding. I think we'll go through 2026, and then 2027 is when he'll probably – he'll be like 4 or 5, and he'll be, starting to understand. And then there'll be kids in school wearing jerseys and stuff. And I've told people, if my son's name's Jackson. If he wants to root for Jackson Dart, which by the next couple years, Jackson Dart, if they get the right coach, he's going to be the biggest thing in New York football around here. If he wants to root for Jackson Dart, I'm not going to stop him from being a Giants fan. There's no way in hell we're going to root for the Jets, though. They just always find a way to screw it up. I don't care if they get Dante Moore. I don't care if they pivot to Trinidad Chambliss. Yeah. No way are we going to willingly become Jets fans. That's something that gets bestowed upon you. You inherit that pain. Yeah, well, look, as a parent, you want to point your kids in the right direction and put some guardrails on things, but you don't want to pigeonhole them too much. So this is a sign of being a good parent, that you're not just forcing your son, hey, I rooted for this team, it's good enough for you. Like, if you worked in the coal mines, would you force your son to work in the coal mines? Of course not. So this is a sign of growth and being a good parent right off the bat, Keith, that you're not, putting your son to live with being a Cowboy fan just because you did. The Cowboys weren't forced upon me. It was a mistake I made at 5 years old. And now seeing the mistakes that my son makes at 2 going on 3, I'm like, you can't let 5-year-olds make lifetime decisions for anyone. Exactly. But nobody stopped me. My dad wasn't around. My dad was a Dolphins fan, or my dad is a Dolphins fan, so I was going to be a Dolphins fan if he stayed around. Luckily, that didn't happen to me. I know you share that pain. Oh, God. I've heard you on the radio talking about your Dolphins fandom. They can't seem to ever get anything right. Maybe they can with the help of my favorite quarterback growing up, Troy Aikman, in the building now. Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the Giants. Obviously, all the talk is about the next head coach. It seems lined up perfectly for John Harbaugh. What's your read on the situation when it comes to the next Giants head coach? I mean, the Giants have to do everything in their power to get this guy. It just fell into their lap. Yeah. The kick goes wide right, and here you go. Here's John Harbaugh, an established, respected, Super Bowl winning NFL head coach that you know is going to command respect, and he's going to install some discipline into the place. And on the sidelines, he's obviously got a ton of experience. He's going to know what he's doing. There you go. That's the culture change that you need. There's reports out there, though, that the Falcons are on his trail, which of course they are. Arthur Blank, 83 years old. He doesn't have that much time out here. He's trying to get this thing right. Raheem Morris gets kicked to the curb, and they're thinking the same thing. Here comes John Harbaugh. But I believe the edge for the Giants is the quarterback, right? Michael Penix is hurt. Kirk Cousins, whatever. I don't know who the quarterback's going to be for the Falcons next year. I think Harbaugh is going to want to go somewhere with an established quarterback. And I know we've only seen a little bit of Jackson Dart, but he's established enough for me. I think that they have to pay him. If they got to tell Joe Shane to pipe down and change his role a little bit and fall in line, like the Giants have John Harbaugh right there waiting. You got to get to him. I don't think the Eagles are going to fire Sirianni. And I think there's already a report that Matt LaFleur is going to get an extension with Green Bay. So you don't got to worry about like the teams that are knocked off in the first round going to get him. I think he's ready for the Giants and John Mara and Steve Tisch. They got to get it done.
Yeah, and look, the last thing they want to have happen is to lose him to Atlanta, because I would have to think if you lose him to Atlanta, that's because Atlanta paid him more. And as we've seen with the Yankees and Hal Steinbrenner, one title you do not want as an owner is being cheap in New York. So whatever it costs, if it costs $18 million a year, $20 million, whatever it is, if that's your guy, and it's clear that that's their number one choice, I think more so than anything else about the success, he's reliable, and has been in one organization for a long period of time. And that's what the Giants want. They want stability. They want loyalty. They want somebody who's going to be there for the next 10 years. And that certainly would seem to be John Harbaugh.
Yeah, let him retire as the guy bringing the Giants back. He'll be king of New York. Let him finish the rest of his coaching career for as long as he wants to coach as king of New York. Let him go and get to the Super Bowl and match up with his brother again. If the Chargers can ever figure it out, if Justin Herbert can ever figure it out, I think it's great. Jackson Dart's first start was the first loss that was handed to Harbaugh and Herbert this year in Giants Stadium. Maybe it comes full circle, and John is the leader going forward.
Yeah. How about the playoffs this weekend? I mean, I feel like everybody I ask who's winning the Super Bowl, and everybody gives me a different answer. We've gotten a little bit more clarity. Some teams eliminated from the field, but with the Eagles being eliminated, it feels like it's even more wide open now. Now you don't even have the defending champions to kind of pinpoint. Who do you think, if you had to pick it right now, who's the team you think that is a real contender?
I've come to the realization that we're going to get another Seahawks-Patriots Super Bowl.
Really? Okay.
Just fast forward the years to now, right? It's not Russell Wilson versus Tom Brady. It's not Belichick versus Pete Carroll, but there's still some characters there that we all kind of know from Vrabel. And I mean, Seattle's all different now, but I think Seattle's got a cakewalk. The 12th man playing in their building, the first round bye. Now they're going to match up against the Niners again, who they held to 3 points a couple weeks ago. That's an easy win. I don't really believe in the Bears, the cardiac Bears. They were able to come back and beat the Packers, but I don't think that they're taking that show on the road. In the AFC as well, I mean, the Patriots had a tough one out the gate last night, but they still won by 13 points or whatever it was. And I mean, win ugly. I don't care how you win ugly. And I don't really trust Josh Allen. I know everybody's saying it's Josh Allen's year, but I'm waiting on him to have a turnover, a costly turnover, or miss a wide open wide receiver, or do something like that, fumble the ball, throw a pick, and not get it done. Probably against the Broncos defense coming up. I just think the Patriots have enough on offense, and their defense is tough, and that's what travels and wins in the playoffs. I think the Broncos could lose to the Bills, but I'm like, I wanted to see somebody different win it and do it, but I'm like, I think we're going to see another Seahawks-Patriots Super Bowl.
Yeah, and it's funny that you talk about the Patriots. They had the largest margin of victory, but yet somehow there were more questions about them, or less doubt, more doubt.
No style points. Yeah, no style points.
Yeah, no question. Other things in the NFL, like when you take a look at, is there anything to be learned, you think, like for the Giants trying to get a new head coach? Is there any lessons that you're learning? Because it does feel like it's a wide open field, and like when we get to the end of the season, there'll be some sort of lesson that we all kind of take away about offense or defense. Is there anything that you're looking at this year, but this is the trend that the NFL is going with a wide open season like this?
Points matter. You better have a kicker that can kick that ball through the uprights, whether it's an extra point or what you think is a chip shot field goal, because it'll come back to get you. Timeouts and time of possession matter too. Like having those timeouts and having the ball at the end. I mean, the Eagles, I loved the ending to the Eagles game because I was sure they were going to win.
Yeah.
And even when they flashed the stat that all of the wild card teams, all of the teams in the wild card round, the winners were trailing at the 2-minute mark, but they had the ball last to go get points and win it. I'm like, oh, here we go. They're going to go down and score and have a walk-off win, and they did not. So I think it's about, man, getting those points. If you're going to kick the extra point, you got to have a kicker that is 99% kicking that ball through the uprights. And it's tough. It's the playoffs. Like, nerves come into play. Like, look at McManus missing those field goals and an extra point.
Killer.
Like that screwed them over. You got to get those points. You also have to be careful when you're using your timeouts, and you got to be looking at the game and the clock and possessions and knowing, like, hey, let them score. We're going to get the ball back. We're going to go down and be able to get points to end the game. That is what it's turned into in the NFL. Who's got the ball last?
Yeah, and are you still, even though you're an NFL free agent in terms of being a fan, are you still delighting in the reaction of Eagle fans to the loss yesterday? Because I got to be honest with you, if they gave me an alternate feed of just watching people in the stadium, man, I would watch that oh God, do I love watching that, man.
I've watched their news reports with fans. I've watched all of the, their influencers that were at the games. Yeah. They're all yelling about A.J. Brown, Nick Sirianni, Kevin Patullo. Yeah. I love it because, one, I'm a Cowboys fan growing up, so you hate the Eagles. That's built in. But I'm also from Monmouth County, New Jersey, where if you go any further south into Ocean County, go Birds, go Birds. South Jersey starts to turn into Birdland. I hate that. It's like these people down there think that they're part of Pennsylvania and Philly. So I love any Philly team losing, whether it's the Sixers losing to the Knicks or the Flyers losing to whomever or the Phillies getting bounced by the Dodgers, whoever it is. I just feel like they have such an arrogant fan base. When you go down there, they're super disrespectful, and nobody needed to be humbled more than Philly at home. So that was great last night.
Yeah, no question. It's funny when you have teams that are successful and fan bases that have kind of grown to becoming they just expect it every single year. And then when they lose, they make it out like, we're so hard done to, we're so – guys, in terms of the sports complaint department, you guys are at the back of the line. You won a Super Bowl last year. Usually that gives you like 5 years or at least 3 years of, hey, it didn't work out this time, but, we'll be back.
Yeah, they were in two of the last 3 Super Bowls.
Come on.
They've got great players. They get Saquon Barkley handed to them. The Phillies are stacked. They were in the World Series not long ago. The Sixers have Joel Embiid. They get VJ Edgecombe. Enough already. Maxey. Like, they're spoiled down there. They've got good sports down there. I think it's just time for them to pipe down a little bit, and I enjoyed the way that ended last night because the Niners had nobody. Kittle goes down. I'm like, come on. They can't catch a break. Kyle Shanahan, coach of the year, if you ask me, because those guys, they don't make excuses. They just fight and find a way.
Yeah, no question. All right, let's move a little to NBA. I know you're a Nets guy. What are you doing this season? Are you locked in, or is it kind of like just wake me up in 2027?
What I'll say the Nets have found a way to do, they found a way to win enough, but they've also found a way to keep you locked in and entertained in these games where you're like, we're going to win. Like they lost last night to the Memphis Grizzlies. I thought they were going to win, but you can't be mad because it's still supposed to be a tank operation. And they are still thinking about the lottery. Like I just read a report today because Michael Porter Jr. is going to be an all-star. He's averaging 30 points a game. He's lighting it up. He's clearly the best player on the team. And there are teams out there like the Golden State Warriors that could use a guy like that. But I read a report today that the Nets rather not trade him at this upcoming trade deadline in February. They rather see where that lottery ball bounces. They got a raw deal. They ended up picking 8th last year. But who knows? Maybe it could bounce their way this year. And supposedly there's a better crop of talent. There is. Yeah. We can already see from college basketball than last year. But I'm not mad at what Yegor Joman has been, Danny Wolf, Drake Powell, Traore. Like these guys that we drafted are actually playing. And then when you add them with the Noah Clowneys and Nick Claxton and Cam Thomas and Jalen Wilson, like the Nets have a young team, a young head coach, a good head coach. Like there's some promise there. Now, it's going to take a few years. And we know in New York, it's so quiet compared to how loud the Knicks fans are and what the Knicks have. But like, I'm cool with where they are right now. I don't want John Morant. I'd like them to trade Michael Porter Jr., but if they want to wait on that to see where the lottery ball bounces, fine. Everything is fine because they have tried to cut the line so many times, whether it was, let's go get an old Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce and try that way with Jason Kidd as the coach, or, here we go, a big three of, KD, Kyrie, and the Beard. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Like I had to live through Ben Simmons on this team. Take it easy. Just build your own team of talent and hope that the lottery ball does bounce and you're able to draft a talented player that becomes a superstar to go with these other role players that you've drafted.
Yeah. Sometimes the hardest part of the rebuild is resisting the temptation to, as you said, cut the line, right? Like look for the shortcut and think, we can just go and do this and it'll save us 3 steps when it really sets you back 3 steps.
It never actually works. It all that glitters is not gold. It's shiny for a minute, but I'm like, I look back now because I was doing a Nets podcast. I was going to so many Nets games before my son was born, and I'm like, that KD Kyrie era was so short lived.
Yeah.
And KD signed a 4-year extension, and we thought for sure this is going to go on until. Nope, because it can all blow up. It gets flammable very fast, and guys force their way out. And Harden, it was COVID, and Harden was hurt, and he didn't like Brooklyn, and then Kyrie didn't want to get the jab, and then KD's like, "Oh, I'm the best player in the world, but I don't know who my teammates are going to be. I can't carry this little Brooklyn Nets franchise. I want to go to the Sun." So yeah, I just rather them build it the right way, and I feel like Sean Marks knows. He's had 9 lives. This is his 9th life here. Like, he can't do it any other way. He's got to take it slow here and build it right.
Yeah, no question. All right, a couple of teams that you're not usually known for appreciating. What have you thought about David Stern's offseason for the New York Mets?
I love it. It's funny. I was just watching a reaction video someone sent to me from a month ago, and it was this guy talking about Keith McPherson leaving WFAN, and his whole backdrop is Mets stuff. And he's like, Keith McPherson's a terrible guy. He's not a good person. He's a troll. If you read his tweet about it, I'm like, dude, take the Mets stuff down before you start criticizing me. It's so obvious, what your lean is. I love that I've become this like famous Mets troll. But I think if people listen to what I say about the Mets, I give credit where credit is due. I analyze them properly. And what I've said for years is David Stearns has got this job, and he's going to create the Mets in his image. Give it time. He inherited the, oh, my God, grimace and all of that went on from Jorge Lopez throwing his glove into the stands and them calling a team meeting. And I watched that team very closely. I hadn't seen a team hit like that from June on. I don't know if ever. Like some of those games, I could not believe how well they hit from top to bottom in the lineup. I'm like, something is going on. It was a special year, but baseball doesn't really work like that. Like, like there's no real rhyme or reason. Like sometimes there's just this superstitious type of thing that goes on. And I feel like David Stearns never believed in that. So like he didn't bring back Jose Quintana. He didn't bring back Luis Severino. He didn't bring back Jose Iglesias, Candelita, the whole mascot for that era. And now that we're a couple years removed and it blew up like it did last year when they go get Juan Soto, right? Thinking they go get this superstar who's postseason proven, and that's going to put them over the top because they, beat the Dodgers 2 games in the NLCS, and they're going to get back to facing the Dodgers.
Right.
Like he would be the difference. When that whole thing blew up, I knew David Stearns was going to say, okay, well, we got Juan Soto for years, and we got Lindor for years. This core of Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo and Jeff McNeil, those guys we got to get out. Now, I think they wanted Edwin Diaz. I don't know who wouldn't want Edwin Diaz, but I think Edwin Diaz wanted to win. I think he's been around the Mets long enough and seen enough change in that clubhouse and disappointment where he's like, hey, can't beat them, join them. They're going to pay me. I'm going to go win the World Series with the Dodgers. We'll see what Marcus Semien has left in the tank. We'll see what Jorge Polanco brings to the table. But I'll say this to the Met fans. If this does not work, you're going to be furious. If this doesn't work, it's going to be a hard sell because last year, Steve Cohen challenged you to come out to the ballpark, buy tickets, and you did. I remember sitting at WFAN some nights watching those games in April and May and even early June being like, Citi Field is rocking on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday. They actually have people in there, and you deserve better. Now you have new faces. You don't have the polar bear. You don't have the flying squirrel. You don't have, Nimmo and his personality. It's going to be a lot to digest if they don't come out of the gate swinging and winning right away. Like Juan Soto's cool, Lindor's cool and all, but this is a whole new project. They're starting over again. Chemistry has to be built again. And, there's going to be some pressure on the manager. Mendoza's going to really have to, figure some things out. And ultimately, I feel like he does not have the starting pitching. And we'll see what that bullpen's looking like now. You're taking on Devin Williams and Luke Weaver. Hopefully you get the best out of those guys because I had a lot of nights pulling my hair out watching those 2 blow games. So let's see. It's going to be very interesting. But I know the Met fan is going to be very loud and upset if this doesn't work right away. And I think it's going to take a little while to come together.
Yeah, and it's not a long list. And maybe you might be more well-versed to point me out where I'm wrong. It doesn't seem like there's a long list of relievers who leave the Yankees and then go on and have better seasons.
No. And you know what? They fired Kevin Harkey this year, the longtime bullpen manager, and Matt Blake has been great. And like we're hard on him in the Bronx. Like our bullpen is right next to the bleachers where I'm at a lot, and like some of the things that are said to these guys, even when they're warming up, like it's tough. But like I guess there's just this strategy of, hey, if they can make it there, they can make it over here. If they can do it in the Bronx, they can do it in Queens, and we'll take it. And Devin Williams obviously has rapport with Stearns from Milwaukee.
Sure.
He saw him coming up. And I think for the cost of Luke Weaver, they're figuring, hey, this is a guy who was a former starter. This guy's been a closer. He's been a setup guy. Like, there's value there. We can figure it out with him. But it's going to get loud because, I mean, the joke that I made was, Met fans, you're becoming what you've always hated, right? You're literally taking the Yankees' leftovers and paying them more money than the Yankees were willing to pay them. The Yankees are telling you they don't want them, and you're saying, come on down. And if these guys aren't effective and they don't get it done, the trolling on the internet.
Could you imagine if Devin Williams blows a save in opening day, and he blows a save? What the
opening day last year? Opening day last year, I think it took him 37 pitches to get the last 3 outs. I was in the Delta Club. There was a 9-year-old kid in front of me booing him. I'm tapping the 9-year-old saying, hey, take it easy. We need this guy. This is our new closer. Don't boo him the first day out. Devin Williams, it better work, because now you're the new Edwin Diaz, and Edwin Diaz was good in the 8th inning, 9th inning. Sound the trumpets. That guy was lights out. Devin Williams is a little bit of a journey. Sometimes he can leave that fastball in the zone and it gets rocked. Sometimes they're sitting on that changeup and those guys are hitting it out of the ballpark. If his stuff's not moving, that air bender, if he's not effective right away, like we'll see. We'll see if that first year in New York was enough for him to adjust to the city, and now he's got some more, like stones, and he's got a little bit more of a way about him. But if you don't have him, who do you have closing those games? It could get rough.
Yeah, no question. All right, let's talk about the Jets a little bit. I know we should probably avoid it because I always get called, you get called a Met troll. I get called a Jet troll because I'm a Dolphin fan. Like,
so be it.
What am I supposed to say positive about the Jets over the last 15 years? Like, you really have to.
They started all 5 offensive linemen every game, and that's the first time an NFL team has done that since the 2023 season.
Yeah, I said the hardest job in New York right now might be working for the social media team of the New York Jets, trying to find positive content for this team.
Post and duck. If you post anything, duck for cover.
Do you think there's anything this offseason? I mean, I would think that it has to be about solving the quarterback position. What do you look at with the Jets? Do you think that next year is going to be any different?
Defense. Obviously you need a quarterback, but when do the Jets not need a quarterback? Who's the longest tenured quarterback that we can think of in recent memory? Who got the most starts? Zach Wilson? That's crazy.
Right. Yeah.
Their defense, they don't have enough dogs on defense. They don't have enough guys on defense. And when you trade away Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner, okay, you got a good return, but their defense got embarrassed. And your coach is a former first-round draft pick of the Jets on defense, a former defensive backs coach, a former great defensive coordinator. They fired Steve Wilkes, and they got worse. He couldn't figure it out. So, yeah. I think part of it is coaching, and Aaron Glenn always wants to talk about coaching, right? He always wants to lean into he's a coach and coaching. But also, it's just not enough talent on that side of the ball. So I think they need to draft defense. If they're going to franchise tag Breece Hall, so be it. If they're going to draft Dante Moore, whatever. But you also need a veteran. You need somebody in there. I don't know who it's going to be. You need a veteran to come in because this place is tough. I'm getting shades of Dante Moore being the next Zach Wilson, Sam Darnold, Mark Sanchez, a West Coast quarterback that comes out early and ends up in Florham Park and ends up in the swirling winds of the Meadowlands. And it is not like sunny California. It is not like the West Coast. And it's a lot to deal with and a lot to process. And here the Jets go and say, hey, here's the keys to the franchise, kids, save us. And nobody can save them. It's just, I don't know. It's a mess. So if they're going to get Dante Moore, so be it. But you need a veteran here to maybe take those first couple starts, whatever, and then also help this kid become a pro. And I would like to see them hire someone else, like a quarterback coach. Tanner Engstrand as a first-year offensive coordinator. He was like a passing game guy, a tight ends coordinator with the Lions. He was in over his head. They go and get Justin Fields, and I like Justin Fields because he came into my life on a show called QB1 when he was in high school. And he was supposed to be the next Cam Newton. He had so much confidence in himself. He went to UGA when Jake Fromm just took them to the national championship. He didn't care. He's a freak athlete that I thought they had a plan for. I honestly thought that they watched him against the Bears, so that was their guy. They gave him $30 million. They had no plan for him. They wanted to turn him into Jared Goff. They wanted to turn him into something that he's not. It was a complete failure. Tyrod Taylor is too old. Done. They got to get a veteran here. They got to draft a young quarterback. But I really would like to see them bring in a quarterback coach that can nurture this kid and make sure this kid develops. Because without the quarterback, you don't have anything in the NFL. And I damn sure don't trust Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn looks lost. He looks like a guy that, the phrase I used last time I was on WFAN was he came in like a lion and out like a lamb. He came in talking about we're the freaking New York Jets and we're built for this. And all this talk about what they were going to be and being hard with the media, and then had his head down and kind of like tucking his tail at the end. And it's like, well, we've seen this happen to the best of them. We kind of thought this was going to happen to you too, Coach.
Yeah, no question. I got some broadcasting questions for you because I teach a class at Montclair State, and I use you a lot of times as the role model of what the modern landscape of broadcasting looked like.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
There's no guardrails anymore. There's no gatekeepers anymore, right? Like you got to build it yourself. So you've been in this space for a while now. I don't want to age you, but in your time in broadcasting between podcasts and digital and radio and TV, what do you think has changed the most in the landscape over that time?
Visibility, the social media, it's incredible. So, I mean, I went to school for radio and television, and there wasn't this visibility. So it felt like you got to get on radio and television to be seen and be heard. Mm-hmm. And so that was my original dream, that like, I'm not going to make it to the NFL. I had a full scholarship to play quarterback at James Madison University. It didn't work for me down there. I transferred to Monmouth University. And really, when I went to Monmouth University, they had a radio station upstairs and a TV station downstairs in our communication building. So I started to like really look at that. I'm like, maybe I can make it to ESPN. Maybe I can make it to Fox Sports, whatever. But over the last, 10 to 15 years, what has exploded with these phones, I just got the new iPhone. The camera is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, what if you're talented, if you're well-spoken, if you're charismatic, if you're good-looking, if you're knowledgeable, you can put yourself out there and create your own audience and build your own brand. And that was not available years ago. Years ago, it was the established brands had to see you and put you on. Even more so, you needed some nepotism. You needed somebody to get you in the door. Even if you were talented, you weren't getting that opportunity. Like, I didn't intern anywhere. I didn't have any family connections. It was damn near impossible for me. I honestly thought I would never get to WFAN or never get on. When I saw this window in this lane, I did social media marketing. I worked at MTV. I worked at Fubo TV, and I worked at Rock Nation. And after I did that for about 4 or 5 years in the city, I'm like, I've learned how to edit videos. I've learned how to write copy. I've learned how to play the algorithm. I know everything about how to post. I'm building these other people's brands and these brands, this television network and this and this. I'm like, if I start now, in 2018, I'm like, maybe if I do this for 10 years, I can build my own brand. It took so much faster. Like it happened so fast for me. Thank God. And so what I tell people now is stop being afraid of yourself. Defeat your own ego. Stop worrying about what your hair looks like. Stop worrying about what your skin looks like. Stop listening to your voice, right? Because your ears are here. Your mouth is here. You don't like the sound of your own voice? Somebody might love it. There was a point in time where I didn't like my own voice. I didn't like the way that I spoke. And now I hear all the time, oh, I love your voice. You got such a great voice. It took a while to get there. But what it took was reps. And I tell these young people all the time, sharpen your sword in the dark. Learn how to look into the camera and say your name. Have some catchphrases and things that you say over and over again that you could come back to. And then when the lights are on and the camera's on you, you've got enough practice and you're ready for battle with that same sword that you were sharpening in the dark. So, what I tell folks is, these establishments, like I love WFAN, and thank God I got to WFAN. And even the way I got into WFAN was unorthodox. I didn't come up in their farm system. And even the way that I left WFAN was unorthodox. I don't think many people have ever just been like, I can't do this anymore, I'm out.
Right.
But, I proved that I could do it on that level. And I have that on my resume forever. Now what I have to prove is, it's not just WFAN, it's me, right? And I'm going to be this wherever I go. And I mean, stay tuned, and people will see as I pop up otherwhere and do when I pop up elsewhere and do other things. But you need to be dynamic, right? I'm not just a voice at night. You can put me on camera. You can put me in the wild. You can drop me in the middle of the bleachers at Yankee Stadium, and I'll lead the bleacher creatures. You can put me in Susan Waldman's seat, and I'll call a game. You could also put me man on the street with a microphone. Like, I'm going to show people how dynamic I can be, and I'm going to show people that they can do it too. But you got to believe in yourself. You got to stop being scared. You got to put yourself out there. All of this that I've done is through content creation. Not my dad putting me on,
Right.
not a family name, not a resume. All of this was because I put stuff out there that got attention. It's the great race for attention right now. I put stuff out there. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. I put stuff out for years that got views and got retweets and got comments, and they can't deny those numbers.
Yeah. And look, as you said, do it in the dark. You don't have to post it right away, right? Like, you can get comfortable with yourself and see what works and what doesn't. But the algorithm's sitting out there waiting for you to jump in, and you can kind of figure things out along the way. Keith, thank you so much for the time, man. Always like talking to you. Always like, we haven't known each other all that long, but always like your content, and nothing but the best in the future and in 2026, my friend.
You're the man, Gordon. I used to listen to you and Larry, especially sometimes when I'd be riding in to go do my show, and like the Nets would be on, or the Yankees would be on, or who knows what would be on, and you guys would be on, and then ESPN made some decisions, and then I remember when you came into WFAN doing updates and stuff, I was like, oh, this is cool. And, then you got some opportunities to do shows. I thought you were going to take over as a new nighttime host when I stepped down, honestly. But, I'm rooting for you. I'm glad to see you on YouTube and doing this type of stuff. And I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to seeing you, whether it's at WFAN or wherever else.
Remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call YRefi today.
All right, finally, I wanted to get into one storyline which popped up over the weekend and is probably only going to grow if his team continues to win. And I saw the story in the New York Post. The headline was something along the lines of, Robert Saleh's work with the 49ers shows that he deserves another chance to be an NFL head coach. And Saleh has certainly gotten some interviews. He's the defensive coordinator with the 49ers and has done a great job. But the idea that his job as the defensive coordinator means he should get absolutely another chance to be a head coach. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. And let's get something right off the top here. There was never any question that Robert Saleh is clearly a great defensive coordinator. That has never been floated. That's literally how he got the Jets job in the first place. And when he got that, when the Jets hired him, that was seen as a real coup. There was real excitement around that hiring. He was not just some X's and O's nerd or some schematic guy. He had the presence. He had the leadership. He was on the sidelines, fired up. That was a guy that was absolutely wanted by teams. That was the reason why they were lining up to interview him. But here's the part everyone, I guess in NFL media, seems to forget. We just saw him as an NFL head coach. And it wasn't, it wasn't so-so. It was a disaster. It was horrible. And it was a lot of things on his plate. The lack of discipline, an awful offense, no quarterback development, chaos just about everywhere. And you don't get to erase that just because you went back to the team you came from and were still great at the job we already knew that you were great at. And yeah, he went back to San Francisco. Fantastic. He went back to the same job that he was already good at, the exact same organization, the exact same role. And look at that. He was great at it again. Yeah, congratulations. That proves one thing. Robert Saleh, and this is not really up for debate, is an excellent defensive coordinator. Congratulations, especially working for one of the great organizations in the NFL, the 49ers, and one of the most creative and innovative head coaches in the NFL, in Kyle Shanahan. That's not really been up for debate. But that job as a great defensive coordinator, and there's no shame in that, it's not the same thing as being a head coach. And we saw that already a little over a year ago. Being a head coach is not just a worrying about one thing. It's about everything. It's about game management. It's about time management. It's about every aspect of the team. And most importantly, what it's about nowadays is about quarterback development. Is there anything we watched during his time with the Jets that would make you believe that quarterback development would be a strength of Robert Saleh. And I know what people are saying, well, he didn't really coach an NFL team. The Jets are dysfunctional. And that is true. That is absolutely true. But guess what? The next job he gets, if he gets one this cycle, it's probably going to be a dysfunctional situation. Like, no one's firing their coach, really, outside of the Ravens, after you have this great season with smooth running. And look, there are things behind the scenes, even with the Ravens, that there's obviously some dysfunction. There's some issues there that need to be worked out. And here's the other thing for Saleh. And this really matters for him because he will get another job, I think, as a head coach at some point. He needs to be very careful with the next job he picks because almost certainly it's going to be the last job. There's very few guys who get 3 chances. So this second chance, he really should view this as a last chance. Now, maybe in another year or 2, he will get another crack. But rushing back after 1 year as a coordinator, a job that he already had and was successful at, after that Jet tenure, that's not playing the long game. And for all the people who want to blame the Jet, everything, fine. Let me ask you one thing, NFL media, and it's clear that Robert Saleh has good relationships in the media, right? That's why these stories, they liked him. He seems like a good dude, all that type of stuff. But let me ask you this, and maybe NFL media doesn't have a favorite team, but if it was announced tomorrow that your favorite team was getting rid of your current coach and bringing in Robert Saleh, how would you feel? Would you be excited about that? Would you feel good about the direction of your team moving forward? Would you be excited about next season? Would you be buying season tickets based on the news that your new head coach was Robert Saleh? Yeah, I didn't think so. So that tells you whether or not, now look, he'll get interviews. That's great. Go interview for jobs, stay in the cycle, keep your name out there, and maybe in a year or 2. And I would say to Robert Saleh, go prove you can do it as a defensive coordinator someplace else. You know, the fact that you went back to the exact same job, we know you're great at that. Can you go build a defense? Can you go be successful some other place outside of the San Francisco 49ers? That would mean a whole lot more to me moving forward that this guy, hey, you know what? The situation he was thrown into, because all of these situations, there are going to be things outside of your control. Now, maybe the Jets have more of those than other organizations, but it wasn't like he handled any of them well, outside of running the stairs before every game that we saw for 3.5 years. So I would say to Robert Saleh, be very careful about the next head coaching opportunity. Don't just grab the next one that comes your way. Be selective, because that next job, as in terms of a head coach, very well is going to be your last one. Pick it wisely. All right, that's going to do it for another episode of Gordon Damer on Sports. We will be back later this week with a fresh episode, and we will see you then.